Hello everybody, and welcome to another Hearthstone video. So today, we're going to do an overview of a new deck that I've built recently. It's another Rogue deck, and this time it is a variation on my Spellsword Rogue deck that I thought about including as just an addendum to the Spellsword deck, but I thought it ended up getting different enough that, that it was worth posting a whole new deck and doing a whole new strategy for it. I find this to be a lot of fun, importantly different in a lot of ways from the Spellsword deck, and very effective. So, essentially, the impetus for this was to play around with the Spellsword deck. One of the things that people tended to comment on with the Spellsword deck was that the Blood Knight combo was either a little bit clunky or a little bit... people didn't necessarily agree with it. So, you've got the Blood Knight and the Scarlet Crusader and the Ardent Squire. That's 5 cards that could be used quite differently. There are also a number of things in here. People were dubious about the Ogre Magi, but I stand by the fact that it's a really undervalued card and it's very effective in this deck. If we go to my new one, I've taken some of those suggestions, I've changed them around, and I've changed the focus of the deck quite a bit to be more about weapons, and to be more about board clearing, and especially the use of the card Blade Flurry. So, when it comes to strategy for this deck, essentially how it works is you want to establish early game board control with things like the Bloodsail Raider, which is a really high value card in the Rogue's hand especially, the Loot Hoarder, SI7 agents, and then you use a lot of your control, which you have a lot of spell-wise. You have Sap, you have Eviscerate, you have Deadly Poison, Backstab, all of that stuff to keep the enemy's board clear. And then you want to end up, your win conditions essentially going into the mid-game, and it is mid-game, not necessarily late-game. Your win conditions are things like Blade Flurry with Deadly Poison on a high-end weapon to clear their board and make way for a final push. It could be a Shadow Step Leroy. It can be a Shadow Step SI7 agent to clear out a board. It can be any number of things. So let's go into the individual cards and talk about why I've included them and what their purpose is. So, Backstab is sort of a no-brainer for any Rogue deck. I'm not going to talk too much about that. Same thing with Eviscerate, same thing with, what else? Those are the easy cards, anyway, so we'll go from there. And SI7, I suppose. So why Shadow Step? Shadow Step is an interesting card. It is not necessarily all that useful if you're not doing something like a Miracle Rogue deck, but it is a part of a win condition for this deck, and it's also a part of a utility condition. So, rogues are generally bad against things like handlocks and really heavy control decks. Things like a Control Warrior will often end up winning 50% of the time or more against a rogue, and so that's why I've included the Big Game Hunter in here. But the thing with Shadow Step is that aside from providing a win condition with Leroy, it also actually allows you to do better against heavy control decks, because essentially you use the Big Game Hunter to kill a giant or something like that, and then you Shadow Step it back, and if the enemy has another one out, if they've done something like the standard handlock play to put down 2 Molten Giants toward the end of their life and put up a Sunfury Protector or Defender of Argus, you can Big Game Hunter, Shadow Step, and Big Game Hunter for only 4 mana, and you've cleared out any of their threats, and you can usually win the game with that. So Shadow Step not only serves as a win condition with Leroy, but it also serves as a win condition with the Big Game Hunter as well. It's also good for board clearing in terms of the SI7 agent. If you need another 2 damage on the board, it's great to pull him back and hit him again. It's good with a number of things of that nature. It's also good, for instance, with the Azure Drake to put him down for card draw, use him for a spell, and then if he survives, or if his health is low, you can do it again. Usually, though, you don't want to Shadow Step him on the same turn unless you're really desperate for cards. It certainly is a way to get more card draw. Deadly Poison is here for synergy with the weapons, and I think I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the weapons themselves. Abusive Sergeant is a great turn 1 drop, and a great turn 1, or a great 1 drop in general. Why this and not something like an Ardent Squire or any number of the other 1-drops? Because when we do talk about 1-drops, we have a lot of competition. The Ardent Squire is excellent. It is sticky. It will not be removed very easily. whereas the Abusive Sergeant absolutely is removed very easily. You have options like the Leper Gnome for guaranteed damage, and the Shield Bearer is increasingly popular in the Zoo deck for the Warlocks, just because of the defense it provides. Young Priestess is another good one. So there's a lot of competition for the 1-drop, but the reason I've chosen Abusive Sergeant is essentially because his value does not decrease as the game goes on. He's a great turn 1 play, because typically, even if you have a class that is good at removing 1-drops, so things like the Mage, the Druid, or the Rogue, if you play it on turn 1, they usually can't take it out on turn 1, so you'll get 2 damage, and the better thing is, if they do, it's because they've wasted a very important card. So for mages, they may well coin out their hero power. Any of them may coin out their hero power. But that's great because it means that for druids and rogues, they take the damage anyway, and they've wasted their coin. For mages, they just wasted their coin. That's sort of the worst scenario. This is the worst against the mage. However, for them or any other class, often it will actually result in wasted control cards. So for instance, I've had rogues backstab an Abusive Sergeant, which is fantastic, because that essentially means that you have traded a card for a card. You've traded a little 1-drop for one of their most important removal spells and combo spells, so excellent, excellent choice. So he's a great drop on turn 1. Also, he doesn't get old. Essentially, if we're on turn 7, he's still a great drop because he can give 2 damage immediately to anything on the board and affect the board profoundly, which is something that no other 1-drop can really effectively do. So the Abusive Sergeant for me is a natural choice here. Blade Flurry is another excellent rogue card. It is important to know how to use it correctly. And in the case of this deck, actually, it's important to not be shy about using it. Essentially, you destroy your weapon and deals damage to its enemies. If you have deadly poison, that obviously counts. And the other thing that's important, that if you don't know, you certainly should, spell power absolutely does affect Blade Flurry. So what that means is, if you play Thalnos, followed by Blade Flurry, you do an extra damage. If you have an Azure Drake out, then you do extra damage. It's brilliant for that. And so, the other thing that's really important about this is that it does the damage to the enemy hero as well. And so, essentially, it's a really high value card even if you don't end up killing a lot of creatures. If you happen to have a Perdition's Blade that you have deadly poisoned, that's 4 damage. Even if you were just going to hit the enemy hero only, it's 2 mana for 4 damage, which is not a bad idea at all, not a bad trade. And if there's even 1 creature on the table, that's just incredible value. If you have Thalnos, or any spell power at all, Thalnos or the Azure Drakes, it's even better, and it's basically always worth it. If there are creatures on the table, it can save you from a lot of binds, and the dream, of course, is double deadly poison Assassin's Blade, but nonetheless, it's strong in basically all cases. It's even strong, even if you have 1 spell power out, it's even strong with the default daggers. Doing 2 damage to everything for 2 mana is not bad, especially because, if you think about it, Paladins do exactly this trick with Consecrate for double the mana, so very, very high value card, which is why there's 2 of them. Eviscerate, obviously, that's your standard sort of rogue card. We're going to keep moving here. Sap instead of Assassinate. Reason being, we have a lot of other removal for large cards, including the Big Game Hunter, and we don't need a lot of removal, hard removal like this, because we actually have plenty of removal as it is with Blade Flurry, amongst other things. So we only have 1 sap in here for emergencies, and I find it is much more valuable than Assassinate, simply because usually it slows down the pace of the game so hard for your opponent that they won't do the same play again. It makes them have very tough decisions. I talked about this with my Spellsword Rogue deck. I stand by it here. Thalnos, once again, exactly the same function as the Spellsword Rogue deck. We just want to... we never want to play it on turn 2. We never want to play it on its own, usually, unless we're hurting for cards. It can function as a good card draw mechanic, but the real value here is throwing it down right before you use some sort of removal spell to give it an extra spell power. So, if you don't have Thalnos, just like before, a Kobold Geomancer will do just fine as well. Obviously, the card draw is preferred, though. Now, Bloodsail Raider, I don't understand why the Bloodsail Raider doesn't get more play. It's a fantastic card, especially for rogues. I was looking through for 2-drops, and my Spellsword Rogue deck has the Acidic Swamp Ooze, and I stand by that choice, because the Acidic Swamp Ooze really is a very high-value card, especially in the current meta when you've got hunters and all that stuff running around. But the thing is, the Bloodsail Raider, when you're playing a rogue and you have a hero power that gives you a 1-damage weapon, this card will essentially always be a 3-3 for 2. A 2-3 for 2 is not a bad deal already, but there is so much potential for it to be so much more than that, that it'd be nuts in a weapons deck like this to not have 2 of these cards. It's a great 2-drop on its own. It will likely be much better value than it says in the card, and if you so happen to have an Assassin's Blade out, or even a Perdition's Blade, or a Deadly Poison on either of those things, even your default daggers, this card's value skyrockets. So I don't see any reason not to include it, and I think that it's actually a very strong 2-drop. Loot Hoarder for card draw. Nice simple thing, and it also gives us some lower down minions, which is good for having early game tempo. The Perdition's Blade, I talked about the reasons why I love it in my Spellsword deck, but I'll do it here too. It's just such a high value card. It will often, even if you just play it alone without comboing it, it will often allow you to remove a creature, or finish off a creature. If you play it with a combo or something else, it will almost certainly go 2 for 1, if not 3 for 1. Very high value card, not a lot of mana, and in this particular deck, it's great because on 1 turn, a fantastic play for board clearing is only 5 mana, and it's essentially, if you want to combo it, it's more, but essentially Perdition's Blade and hit with it, followed by a Blade Flurry. And you can get essentially 1 damage on something random, or 2 if you've comboed it with like a backstab, 2 damage from hitting something with it, and then 2 damage on everything with the Blade Flurry. It's a really early game board clear that is just a very, very valuable thing. Big Game Hunter is here for dealing with heavy control decks, and I don't think it doesn't lose very much value when it's going against aggressive decks. 4-2 is usually not an ideal stat allocation, but nonetheless it's a big threat on the board that if they don't clear, if they're something like a Face Rush Hunter, if they don't clear it, you can make a lot of use of it. With Shadow Step, it just becomes all the better, because you can kill something big, something like a warrior or a handlock would drop, and then pull it right back to your hand. And usually at the point in the game where they're dropping a lot of very expensive legendaries, you can put it down, pick it back up, and you could even play it a second time in the same turn. But more importantly, you can put it down, pick it back up, and still go on and play other things in your turn, because it's only 3 mana. So really, really excellent, high value removal spell, especially for dealing with control, and not a bad minion in its own right. SI7 is just, you want to play it with every rogue deck you ever make, basically with no exceptions. It's an exceptional card. And with Shadow Step, it becomes even better. You usually do want to save your Shadow Step for something better than an SI7 agent, but don't hesitate to use it if, for instance, you have like a 4 health creature on the table that's getting in your way. The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head is something like this guy, the Booty Bay Bodyguard. But if you have something with 4 health sitting there in front of you, you can drop it, pick it back up and drop it again and kill it for free with only 4 mana and whatever you used to combo before it. So it's a really, really high value card for that, especially in this deck. Leroy is the same sort of principle. Leroy is your win condition. Not your only win condition, there are a lot of win conditions with this deck, but it is one of your win conditions. Not a whole lot of explanation required here. He's great with Shadow Step, and the other thing that is actually quite neat with this deck, nice touch, is because you have 2 Blade Flurries and you don't need to be too afraid to use them, you can play him before you have lethal, and then you can, as long as you follow it up with an immediate Blade Flurry to take out all the whelps that you spawn, and usually that's an effective way of turning tempo around and getting board control. But yes, usually you want to keep him to the end so that he can get 12 or 18 damage, depending on how many Shadow Steps you so happen to have. The Senjin Shieldmaster, just like in the Spellsword deck, is here for the purpose of dealing with aggro. It's a good 4-drop in its own right, but it also is great for slowing down enemy tempo. It is better than a Defender of Argus with this deck because it's a guaranteed taunt and it's a guaranteed minion, as opposed to Defender of Argus, which may only give you 1 taunt. Some people were suggesting with the other deck that a Defender of Argus might be good, but if you look at the minions that this deck has, none of them are very good for taunting with. The Bloodsail Raider would be good for Defender, but I mean, and maybe the SI7, but the Big Game Hunter is not. The Loot Hoarder certainly isn't, the Abusive Sergeant isn't, so it's better just to have a dedicated taunt minion, I think. The Assassin's Blade, I only have one of them in here, but this is essentially the same deal as the Perdition's Blade. It's a great card to end games with. It's a great card for Blade Flurry synergy. Do try to use it immediately, though. Do try to use it right away and get all the value you can out of it, because with 4 durability, that's nice to have, but it's also very vulnerable to getting oozed, and it's also very vulnerable to losing a lot of value that way. This is a sort of a finisher, high-end card that synergizes very well with Bloodsail and with Blade Flurry and Deadly Poison, but do be careful when you use it. The Azure Drake, again, it's just a great card for rogue decks. You have spell power, you have card draw, and a 4/4 body. It just makes sense. And finally, your Sprint is your get-out-of-jail-free card in a lot of ways. This deck usually does have a point at which it will run out of steam, because just like any rogue deck, you're running through a lot of cards. It has a lot of card draw mechanics, so if you play it well, you don't necessarily you can often delay that running out of steam for a long time, and you can often sometimes even outlast your opponents with it. However, the Sprint is an excellent turn 7 play if there's nothing really pressing on the board. It doesn't help if you're super behind, but if you've been doing your job and sort of controlling the board and generally being effective on that, then usually you can take a turn off to Sprint. And having 4 extra cards in the late game when your opponent and you might be top decking, or they might be sort of hurting for cards as well, having 4 extra cards will often win you the game, and you can use it to draw into combos. If you wait until turn 10 with it, for instance, you can often draw into a Blade Flurry and maybe even a Deadly Poison, which is a fantastic way to clear a board if you're behind. Turn 10 Sprint, Deadly Poison, Blade Flurry, assuming you already have a weapon out, is a great way to clear a board and really make way for winning the game. So this is a great utility card. It's a great sort of resetting card, if you will. So that's the Nightblade deck. I've had a lot of fun playing it lately. It's very effective at what it does, and yeah. So essentially, I'm going to put out a trial video with it as well, just to demonstrate how it plays in the ladder. But I can tell you that when I started recording, I was at rank 8, and actually I had screwed around with a number of different decks and different builds earlier, and from rank 8 I actually dropped all the way down to rank 10, and this deck basically brought me right back up to 7.5 here. So it has been very effective. Its win rate for me has been about 80%, so hopefully it can do the same sort of stuff for you. So if you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. I would appreciate it very much. And if you have any comments on how the deck works, or any questions, anything like that, feel free to comment here or on the Hearthstone page in the description, and we'll go from there. So thanks very much, and I will see you next time.